Welcome back to the Community Roundtable. I'm very excited to chat with our guests here today as we continue our conversation on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and look at the months honoring certain groups of people. March is Women's History Month. And so I wanted to start off by, given the state of our society today, what is the importance in having these months, and what does it really mean? Jami?
So I want to frame that with, it's important to know what our history is before we can acknowledge where we're at. In biblical times, women were considered property. They either belonged to their father, their husband, or their brother. And so keep in mind, although we think that's ancient times, that's a document or a book, the Bible, that we currently use. And so that's the context of information that still is that exists on a daily basis in our society. Other things to consider were, I'll make it very current. It wasn't until 1974 that a woman could get a credit card in her own name without being co-signed by her husband, father, or another man. Also in 1974 was the first time it became illegal for a bank to deny a woman a mortgage without being co-signed by a man. In 1920, so to me that's still kind of current, it was illegal to sell any form of contraception. It was not until 1965 that the Supreme Court said that it had to be legal across the entire country, not just state to state. It had to be legal across the entire country that married couples could purchase contraception. Married couples. In some states, it was still illegal for a single woman to buy contraception.
So being the youngest person here on the panel, how do you feel about today's norms?
For me, where it is now, there are a lot of opportunities, but we do face certain challenges, as we know, with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. That's a challenge for women's reproductive rights and just healthcare in general. And that's important for women if, they're vital to our society. They contribute to the economy. And so there is a great need for them to have that access to health care so that they can continue, in their careers, continue having families, continue being productive members of society as well.
Absolutely. As a woman in business, I can relate with that, especially in the entertainment industry. It's very male dominant, and being one of the only women who would sit in some of the rooms and have to be able to make my voice be heard, to be able to get things put across, especially in a producing position where, I was, always maybe set to the back and then they would listen to the men. I'd have to say it was until Barbra Streisand called me to the front that actually started me to stand out when I was working on one of her shows. So that, that really changed a lot for me, to where all of a sudden it wasn't always just the men being called up to work on lighting or do something. So that was a big move for me in my industry and in my career. Moving on to another question, we've had past achievements and women through history. You talked a little bit about that and some of the things that have happened through time. What are some of the things in history that really stand out to you, Rebecca?
I was born in the early 1950s, so it wasn't that long after World War II. And so I came into this life in this setting that was different and new, because women had to take over America basically during the 1940s, during World War II. We have the picture of Rosie the Riveter, I can do it type of thing, right? And the women did it. Not only the women who worked in factories, but the women who did farming, because the men were overseas. They had to take care of the kids, they had to maintain the farming equipment, they had to maintain the whole United States. But yet, as I was in junior high and high school in the 1960s, oh, you're a girl. What do you want to be when you grow up? Of course, it was understood you'd be a wife and a mother, but, if you were going to have a career, you would be a teacher or a nurse. We didn't have a vision for opportunities that are available in science, mathematics, technology. Of course, there wasn't that much technology at that time. And education, it wasn't a very far reach for most of us. And that's where I think that we can change our world today by having relationships with other women, particularly in the mentoring of young women, encourage them that, you know, you can do anything you want to do. And then it's our place to provide the encouragement and sometimes funding for the women to reach those goals. But the first thing is plant the idea. You can reach for the stars.
I love that. That's great. Well, thank you very much. I love the conversation. We'll have to continue it a little off screen, but thank you very much for joining us at the roundtable.